We bought the land in '97, we built our house in 2000, and right off the get-go, we decided we wanted to do something to, quote, improve the land. We're 172 acres, but we're actually only farming on less than 5 acres, and we're supporting ourselves sustainably on that 5-acre footprint. We've got an apple orchard there that we've got about 150 apple trees now. We've got the 2 hoop houses, and we're doing it on a small area, and we pretty much are leaving the rest of it. We're not managing it per se as a farm, more as a wildlife habitat.
So Jim, what kind of projects have you worked with NRCS on?
Let's see, there's been a number of them. First of all, we did a habitat restoration where we restored all of our fields to native prairie. We did a lot of tree planting. We did wetland restoration, and that also was in collaboration with Fish and Wildlife. We've done a couple of hoop houses. As we've lived here for a while, what we wanted to do with our place kind of evolved. At first, we just wanted to get away from the city. And then eventually we were like, I think we can be farmers and be respectful of the land as well and improve it and not just turn it into rows of corn, for example. Currently we're doing this golden wing warbler project. We did a buckthorn eradication project. I think those are the big ones.
What is the purpose of the golden wing warbler project?
Unless you have a fire or a major windstorm, logging is the only other way in which forests will go through succession. And the majority of our woods were probably 40 years old or older. So when this program came up, it made sense because what it does is it creates some succession. If all of our woods and all of our neighbors' woods are fairly mature forest
and
the same age, there's not as much diversity. And to me, diversity has been kind of like the little key item that I try to look for in whatever we're doing out here.
Right.
What creates more diversity? Because apparently the golden wing warbler needs that habitat where maybe it's like, what, 5 or 6 years old, where you've got like popple suckers that are regrowing now, that's kind of their prime habitat for their nesting. Now they may move into other older parts of the forest after they've hatched and fledged, but during that period, I think that's important for them, you know, if my biology is correct. And there really hasn't been anything like that in this area. And so I thought this would be exciting. And to see the process take place, even though it looks scary at first when you see just all this devastation, you just have to kind of look and think, all right, in a year or two, it's not going to look anything like this. It's going to heal up. For example, when we do a controlled burn, we may burn a 40-acre field and it's all black. There's like nothing out there. But then a week later, you already see little green shoots coming up.
Right.
And then halfway through the summer, it looks more vigorous and more alive than the areas that didn't get burned that summer. So I just look at this as part of the natural succession, and it's going to be fun watching it evolve.
Absolutely. So how has the experience been with the loggers in here?
I think it's been pretty good. I think that our logger is a young, enthusiastic guy. I think he wants to do a good job.
Has the noise been disturbing you, or have you?
No, it's not a problem. I mean, first of all, it's at the far end of our property, but to me, it's just work in progress. It's not objectionable at all.
How long have they been working in here?
Well, they've been here, I would say, most of the hard winter.
Would you recommend doing a project to your neighbors?
Definitely, I already have.
Great.
That's been already happening.
When did you start the planning process for the golden wing warbler project?
I think that was about 3 years ago. We filled out the paperwork, we met the requirements, and then I started looking for a suitable logger. And actually, Shannon, you gave us a hot tip on a young guy who is not that far away from us, as it turned out, and he's worked out really good.
Great.
So we're probably, I think, probably about 80% done with that project. We got Duane Folgard, who's been helping along the way in terms of not only designing the program, but making sure that the logger stays on track as far as how it gets executed. Yeah, it's going well. I'm really pleased with that. But that's the nice thing about working with Duane. With his background, this isn't his first time having done this kind of a project. So I feel very good about being able to lean against him and say, well, how's this look, Duane? Are they executing the project the way it was intended?
Right. It is nice to work with Duane.
I'm a forester for the American Bird Conservancy, and we have a partnership with NRCS to help private landowners manage their land for young forest wildlife, specifically golden-winged warblers and American woodcock. And so I helped design this project and lay it out and guide it through the NRCS application and contracting process, and then help Jim deal with the loggers and stuff to some extent too. It's a commercial timber sale that's designed to create a disturbance that will lead to young forest habitat, brushland, and young trees coming up that young forest wildlife like golden-winged warblers will be able to use for their breeding needs is the main thing that warblers use it for. Golden-winged warblers are what's called a neotropical migrant. They winter down in South and Central America, and they come up to North America to breed. And they breed in young forest and brushlands. That's where the males sing from trees to attract females and to warn other males away. And then the females nest someplace where there's fairly thick brush or young trees to protect them from avian predators. It can't be too thick because they nest on the ground, so there needs to be enough vegetation on the ground for them to hide their nest in. One of the interesting things about them is then after the chicks hatch, they move to some nearby older forest, and then they feed on insects, mainly caterpillars, in that older forest until they migrate back south again in the fall.
So the males, when they're doing their calling, are they calling from like these remaining mature trees that are in the area?
Yeah, actually, usually the males come up from south a little bit before the females. Okay. And each male will try and find what they call a perch tree or a singing tree.
Like maybe one of these.
Yeah, like one of these ones around us.
Oaks or maples that we see.
The male will claim that tree and sing from it to, like I said, to try to attract females.
How big of an area will he say, this is my turf?
Well, that's one of the things about golden-winged warblers is their song is really weak. It doesn't carry very far. So the area that, one male kind of claims is, maybe 2 or 3 acres maybe at the most.
As much as that, okay, all right, okay.
Oh, it can be a smaller area than that, though,
really?
It depends.
Okay. And then when they fledge, do they move, will they literally vacate this whole area and then go to another part of the forest that has not been logged?
Well, it depends. That they'll go someplace that has the structure that they're looking for, and that structure is fairly big mature trees, but also with an understory of brush or young trees.
Okay.
So, like if you have a mature forest that doesn't have hardly any brush or young trees underneath it, that's not what they're looking for.
So they probably won't even go very far from here.
No.
They may be a couple hundred yards at the most, then possibly.
Oh, a couple hundred yards to maybe a mile, probably at the outside. Okay. How many warblers can occupy an area depends to some extent on the habitat. Usually a pair will take up an acre or 2 to 3, maybe 3 acres. Lesser habitat, it might be 10 acres. So with a 25 to 30 acre project like yours, we should get at least 3 pairs, hopefully more than that, maybe as many as 10.
And then they disperse beyond that nesting area anyway, so.
Yeah, like we were talking about earlier, they only really stay in the young forest while they're nesting, and when the chicks hatch, as soon as the chicks can fly, they move a little ways to some older forest that's got the insects and stuff that they're looking for.
All right, that makes sense. That's pretty neat though. I'm excited to see them and how that all plays out. Yeah.
Golden-winged warblers have been declining quite substantially. Since the breeding bird survey started in the 60s, the golden-winged warbler population is down about 80%, but they haven't declined in Minnesota nearly as much as they have like farther east. Minnesota and Wisconsin are actually probably their stronghold, especially Minnesota. About 50% of all the golden-winged warblers in the world breed in Minnesota, they estimate.
Wow.
I'm not sure how many individual projects have been done, but I think we're up to about 10,000 acres of projects that have been completed, if I remember right.
Within Minnesota, or is that nationwide?
That's nationwide, yeah.
Wow.
Within Minnesota, we're probably at about 3,000 or 4,000 acres. The criteria that we're looking for is an area that's about 70% forested or more, not with too much grassland or agriculture. And then also it needs to be mostly deciduous forest because they don't like conifer trees. The kind of insects and stuff that they eat are stuff that's in deciduous forest, broadleaf forest.
Okay.
This particular area is, kind of part of that transition area in Minnesota. That's one of the things with Minnesota is we have the prairie which is mostly farmland now down in southwestern Minnesota, and the boreal forest in the northeast.
So this is that.
And this is kind of that transition.
Basswood, woodland.
Yeah, this is kind of that transition area between, which is perfect golden wing habitat.
But there are other species too that benefit from this forestry project too. You mentioned also like woodcock, for example. I imagine grouse will take advantage of that, and the deer will, but there's probably also, non-game species as well that key off of this forestry disturbance, as you called it.
Yeah, there's a lot of non-game animals that use it too. Songbirds are probably the easiest one to think of, like golden wing warblers and chestnut-sided warblers. There's also the woody debris that's created by a disturbance like this. Insects and stuff will go into that wood, and then birds and other things that eat insects will be attracted to that. And then as the wood rots, amphibians like salamanders and frogs and stuff will live in that rotting wood. And so there's a whole suite of species of wildlife that benefit from this kind of habitat.
Right. And then I suppose in a mature forest, some of this material that we see that's going to contribute to the understory just doesn't exist anymore. It's all up in the canopy.
Your typical mature forest that people think about, where it's pretty much all big trees. Yeah, there's really not much down by the ground as far as biomass goes. So ground-based animals really have a hard time finding food. There is other wildlife that uses that mature forest habitat, birds and stuff that feed up in the canopy of trees. Then of course some woodpeckers and stuff that like big trees, especially big dead trees. So.
Well, that's what excites me, because it's creating some further complexity that we didn't have on our property. So.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, the history of what's happened in Minnesota has created, in many cases, a kind of simple landscape. But most wildlife evolved when the landscape was a lot more complicated. A lot of it was the Native Americans used fire to manage the landscape, and so that created disturbances that the wildlife took advantage of,
Sure.
The ones that like that kind of habitat.
Well, I imagine I'll be even doing some nice raspberry picking out here probably in short order.
Yeah, that's one thing, is a lot of the fruiting raspberries and other kinds of shrubs and plants that fruit, they need a lot of sunlight, so they don't really grow where there's a lot of shade. So that'll attract like bears and stuff like that too, that like to eat berries. This particular area, the idea was to cut about 85% of the trees to open it up enough that you're getting sunlight to the ground, so you get a lot of that woody young trees and brush coming in. With this particular logging operation, they're what we call a more conventional operation, where they have a feller buncher that actually fells the trees and then puts it into bunches, and then there's a skidder that comes around and grabs the bunches and hauls it to either a limmer or someplace where they do the limbing, then go to the slasher where it's cut into products to haul to the mill. The main species that they're taking out is aspen, but also some maple and basswood. Mainly the trees that are getting left are the oaks, and also some maple basswood are getting left too. The oaks especially, but the maples to a lesser extent, are preferable for leaf trees because they live longer. A lot of people think trees live forever, but they don't. They're living things just like us. They're born and grow old and die. Aspen and birch, trees like that, are quite short-lived. They only live like about 70, 80 years roughly. A lot of these ones were going to die here anyways, whether we cut them down or not. If you leave trees like that, they have a tendency to die pretty quickly, and they don't serve that purpose of those perch trees or singing trees. You want to leave the longer-lived species like the oak and the maple. They're more wind firm too. They don't tend to blow down as bad as some of the other trees do. Especially in places like this where there's a lot of deer, it's pretty difficult to plant trees and have them survive long enough to get very big. So it'll mostly be natural regeneration. If some areas don't regenerate adequately, then Jim will have to think about doing some artificial regeneration, planting.
Well, we had a fairly mature stand of popple in here. We can be pretty confident that that's gonna sucker
popple
back, right?
or aspen, that regenerates through root suckers. So that's pretty reliable. That's one of the nice things about that particular species of trees, is you cut the above ground part down, the below ground part will sprout up new trees. So that's pretty quick and simple process with that species of tree.
We won't see suckers this summer, will we?
Oh,
or
yeah.
Will we? We will,
Yeah,
huh?
probably within a month or two.
Wow, okay.
The longest they'll be
Really?
coming up. Whatever they don't haul out of here, or whatever you don't use for firewood, it'll start rotting pretty quickly, and then of course the popple sprouts will come up and it'll kind of disappear into the popple sprouts pretty quick.
Okay.
They grow 4 or 5 feet often the first year.
Oh, wow, that's impressive. That's really, I'm excited about that. I can't wait.
It's got the whole root system of a mature tree, providing it with moisture and nutrients. They'll grow like crazy for the first 4 or 5 years. They grow really fast.
Okay, all right.
As long as that root system's still alive.
So I would imagine, what do you think, maybe like in 10 years, all this stuff that we're tripping over is probably going to be broken down and somewhat reclaimed.
Oh yeah, well a lot of it will rot and then it'll kind of slowly sink and be covered by leaves and stuff and sort of disappear into the forest floor.
I'm just excited what this is going to be like. Having been here now for close to 25 years, just to see how it's going to evolve this next phase of life. What kind of animals we'll see, what kind of plants we'll see come into the area. Should be interesting. Isn't the golden wing almost kind of like the canary in a coal mine? If there's something wrong with a canary, then we ought to be thinking about how that affects us. It's telling us that there are things going on within that ecosystem.
Especially the way it uses young forest and older forest. If we're losing golden wing warblers, that's telling us that we're losing that diversity.
Birds, I think, in general, are an indication of the health and quality of our environment in general. If you're not hearing many birds, I think that's kind of something that one should stop and take notice. One of the things that we've just enjoyed ever since we came here was just going outside and seeing and hearing the complexity of the wildlife and learning what it all is. I mean, I didn't know all the birds, I didn't know all the tree species, but getting acquainted with them and understanding the complexities of the relationships between them and appreciating that, it was just very enriching. It's what I enjoy doing, is just going out and witnessing what's taking place and the story that it tells. Nature can probably pretty much take care of itself if you just kind of give it some very gentle guidance, if you will, to let it do its own thing. And I think anybody, if they're blessed to have a piece of property, can look at it in that manner and say, what can I do to leave something better than when it was when I was here? A lasting legacy, I guess you could call it.
If other people want to do a project like this, the first thing you want to do is contact your local NRCS office and see if you're in the proper area. It's kind of a specific area of the state, the transition area between that more open prairie and agricultural area and the more boreal type forest farther north and east. So there's a specific area to do that in, although there's other kinds of habitat you can create in even other parts of the state. Most anybody that owns land, I think if you contact your local NRCS office or your local soil and water conservation district, they can often be a clearinghouse to let you know about different things you can do on your land or different programs that might be available to help you out.
So what programs have you utilized through NRCS?
We did that EQIP program where we replanted all of our old fields into warm season grasses and forbs. That was the first one. So that included the fields that were planted, there were trees that were planted. That was the major one that we've done.
How many years ago was that?
That started in, I think, 2000.
Okay.
We did 2 hoop houses. That was EQIP, and so that was a cost share program. We did the first one, went really well, and then I think like 3 years later, we said, all right, time to build a second one. They're both like 30 feet wide and 100 feet long. And it's amazing what you can grow in a hoop house. You can really plant a lot, and then when you've harvested it, you can turn around and plant again. So in the course of one growing season, you may have 4 different generations of produce on that same square foot. We didn't really know early on how it was all going to play out, but we just took one step. Hey, that was pretty cool. What's the next step going to be? So then we tried this, and then that worked out well. Or maybe, oh, nope, that wasn't so good, but now we'll go in this direction. So it's been kind of a discovery process.
Sure. Tell me about your experience working with NRCS.
It has been really good. I'm so pleased. Debbie and I came from the big city, so we didn't even know what NRCS meant, or soil conservation, or any of those terms or agencies, because I really didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. This notion of, well, you just want to make the land the way it was. Well, when do you mean the way it was? Because 100 years ago, it was white pine forest. Before then, it was a big prairie. So which century, which era are you thinking you need to do? And I didn't know. And then the epiphany that I came away with was, I just want to create as much complexity as I can and let nature kind of take its course. At this stage, now that I've been doing this for 25 years, we'll have people come and visit and say, how do I do this too? And I say, you need to contact your NRCS office. You really do. There are a lot of resources. If nothing else, just good information. Because we didn't know anything. We were not farmers. We didn't grow up on the land per se. We were suburban kids.
Sure.
So it's a very good resource. So much of what is unique about our property, I would have to credit the people that have been involved in NRCS, be it the fields, the wetland area, this Warbler project, and it all ties together. It's not these isolated, conflicting projects. There is kind of a harmony between all of it. So it's been kind of a life project, really.
So with all the projects that you have already done, what do you foresee in the future?
That's a good question. I haven't a clue. I'm counting on you to let me know what possibilities there may be.
Perfect.
If you got some ideas, I'm game.
I will do some brainstorming.